Hey everyone, Cody from Mac Telecom Networks. In this video, we're going to do a simple setup of a point-to-point network. I've had these AirMax GigaBeam Plus radios for quite a while. They were for a client, but that project got on hold. So what we're going to do today, we're going to set these radios up, get them adopted into UISP, and then see some of the throughput. If you're new here, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. If you'd like to hire me for network consulting, visit www.mactelecomnetworks.com. You'd find me on Twitter at MacTelecomN. And if you'd like to support the channel, we do have Ubiquiti affiliate links, and I'll put those in the description below. First, let's go over the topology and see the gear that we're going to be using. At the top in my house, I'm going to be having the UISP router, and I've already done a video on that, and I'll put links in the description below. That will be connecting to our internet connection, and then we'll have a GigaBeam Plus connecting to it, and that will be delivering the power to it. I've just placed this barn here, but really it's just going to be at the side of my house about 50 feet away. We'll have another GigaBeam Plus, and then we'll have a UISP switch. This UISP switch is just going to be attached to a power outlet on my house. A lot of people have been asking, how do you power this thing up? Well, you're still going to need some source of power feed coming into your building, or wherever you want the other point-to-point end to be. And the UISP switch is going to be getting its internet connection or its data feed from this other GigaBeam Plus connecting to the UISP router that's connected to our internet. Before we get these configured into UISP, let's take a look at the GigaBeam Plus specs. So this is a part of the AirMax, and it does have low interference 60 gigahertz radios. You want to make sure that these radios have clear line of sight and there's no trees or no leaves. These can also be affected by rain if they're very far apart. It has a 35 dBi antenna gain, and it has a 1.5 gigabit per second bidirectional low latency throughput rate. We could do link planning in our ISP design center. We'll probably do a separate video on that. The GigaBeam Plus radios are $219 MSRP Canadian. Now we're into my UISP controller, and this is hosted on the Ubiquiti cloud. You have to have a minimum amount of 10 UISP devices for this controller to stay up and running past 30 days. You can host it yourself as well. So we already have the UISP router in here, and we need to put in the switch and the two antennas. If we click on my UISP router, we could go over to settings. And from settings, we could do DHCP leases. I know that my switch is on 192.168.2.99, but usually it does pop up saying that the switch is ready to be adopted. But what we're going to do, we're going to hit this plus button, and then we'll add the IP address 192.168.2.99. The username and password is UBNT. And then we'll press add. Now we need to assign this switch to a site. I just have two sites selected, but we're going to select this new site and press confirm. Okay, and now we could see that the switch is in our UISP controller. We could click on the switch, and the switch does show quite a bit of information. Our uplinks, our downlinks, our subscribers to the switch, as well as turning on the PoE on and off. So if we look back at our diagram, we're going to have one of the GigaBeam Pluses attached to the router and one to the switch. So we need to go to the router, and we need to turn the PoE on one of the ports. So we'll go over to interfaces, and then we'll go to port 2. By default, the PoE is turned off, and there is two different PoE modes. So we could do 27 volts, or we could do 27 volts on 4 pair. We only need the voltage going down 2 pair, so we'll do 27 volts. And then we'll press apply changes. Now we can see that there's a little lightning bolt symbol on port 2, which means PoE is going down it. So let's do the same thing for the switch. We're going to go over to ports. We'll go to port 2, and then we'll turn the PoE on to 27 volts. And press apply changes. Next is to get the GigaBeam Plus set up, and I know that the IP address for the one that I've connected to the router is 192.168.2.61, and we can take a look at our DHCP leases here. So we're going to go and browse to that IP, 192.168.2.61. This brings us to the GigaBeam Plus setup page. We need to select our country and then our language, and then accept the terms and press continue. We're going to give it a new username and password. Default is just UBNT, so I'm going to put in a username and password and then press save. Now we're at the GigaBeam Plus dashboard page, and the first thing I do is statically assign an IP address to the antennas. So we'll go over to network, and then we'll switch it from DHCP to static. I'm just going to give it the same IP, 192.168.2.61. The subnet is /24, and the gateway will be 192.168.2.1. And we'll just give it some DNS of 1.1.1.1 and 8.8.8.8, and we'll press Save Changes. There's a few things that we need to do to get this point-to-point working. We need to go over to our wireless, and one of the antennas needs to be in master mode. So the one connecting to the UISP router will be the one in master mode. Then we need to give it a link name and a security key, and this security key and link name has to be the same on both sides. So I'll give it a name of YouTube, and we'll give it a security key of test1234. We could also select our 60 gigahertz frequency, but I'm just going to leave everything at default for this video, and then we'll press Save Changes. The settings have been saved, and we could see in the top right corner that this isn't in UISP yet. So let's go back to our UISP dashboard. From the dashboard, we'll hit the plus button and then put in the IP address of the antenna. So it will be 192.168.2.61. And then we'll put in our username and password that we set for it. Once the username and password is taken, it will ask us to put it in a site. So if you're managing multiple different sites, you could choose which one to put it in. We're going to be putting it in the new site. Okay, at the top beside wired, we now see this wireless tab, and we could see our 1 GigaBeam Plus point-to-point. We could click on it, and then it's going to give us a whole bunch of information. It will tell us our location, which I just set to Toronto, and then it will give us our link potential and our link capacity. We could also take a look at the topology, which will show us what's connected to what. Below we have our radio frequencies, the channel widths, the TX and the RX, and also the wireless security and the country. We have information about the P2P main as well as different notifications. Now under RF, we have our link and our link settings. Under the link settings, we could give it a name and a security key. We could change the frequency of the radio and then do advanced, which just shows us which country we're in. We also have our basic setup, which is setting a static IP to this device. So we'll do the other radio right in UISP. We could also manage it. This would change the firmware, the credentials, maintenance mode. We could do backups, and we could forget the device. So now let's get the other GigaBeam set up, and this will just be set up as the access point. The second GigaBeam is now powered on, and it is on 192.168.2.62, and we can see that in the top right corner that it's ready to adopt. So let's just click the adopt button. It's going to ask us which site we'd like to adopt it to. This will be the new site, and we'll press confirm. Okay, and we can see that the new GigaBeam Plus has been added. So let's click on that and get it all set up for the point-to-point. The first thing we need to do to get this link up and running, we need to give it the same SSID and username for it to operate. So we're going to go to RF, and then we're going to have it on link, and it will be under the settings. So the name right now, the link name is UBNT, but we set ours to YouTube. And then we put our password as test1234. So in a few minutes, this wireless link should come up. Now after giving it the YouTube name and the password of test1234, we could see that the link needs improvement. We could see the link potential and the link capacity. If we went to the IP of one of the GigaBeams, we could see what the link potential is. And it's showing 674 megabits per second on the receive capacity. And on the transmit capacity, it's showing 809 megabits per second. So since these are already linked together and I didn't give it a static IP, I should have done that first. We're going to need to browse to the site. So we'll go to 192.168.2.62, and then we're going to go over to networks. From networks, we're going to set it to a static IP, and I'll just give it the same static IP of 2.62, and the gateway will be 192.168.2.1. We'll give it DNS of 1.1.1.1, and then we'll do quad 8. And then save the changes. So with that, our point-to-point link is now up and operational. I'm going to bring all this gear outside, set the router up at the front of my house with one of the GigaBeams, and the switch at the back of the house just plugged into power, and we should be getting network. For the connections, the blue cable going into the UISP router is connected to my UDM SE, and this is giving it internet access. And then the white cable is connecting to the GigaBeam. Now walking down the side of the house to the backyard, this is where the second GigaBeam is. I've just mounted it to the back of the fence. From the backyard GigaBeam, I ran a cable across the lawn to the UISP switch. From the UISP switch, I ran a long cable all the way up the stairs to my desktop as my laptop adapter stopped working. Now that you've seen how everything is hooked up together, let's take a look into the UISP network. We know that the switch is connected through this wireless link, and we have a minus 58 dB signal, which is pretty good, and the link potential is at 97%. I wanted to do some iPerf tests with my laptop downstairs in this computer, but as you can see, my Ethernet adapter on my laptop stopped working. So we're directly connected to the UISP switch that's outside through that wireless link. So let's run a speed test and see what we get. The internet connection coming into my house is 1 gigabit by 1 gigabit, but I am still having some issues with my UDM SE with the PPPoE, so we get about 600 up and down. The UDM SE is plugged into my UISP router, so we should be getting around 600. So let's do a speed test and see what we get. And from the speed test, we're getting 498.25 down and 548.67 up. So that's pretty much my full speed going through that wireless point-to-point link. So that was a quick setup of how to set up point-to-point links. Once this job does move forward, I've gotten permission to film on site. I'll show you the mounting and how we position the point-to-points together to get them aligned properly. Also, if you're looking to do integration with Unifi for point-to-point, you would have to use the Unifi building-to-building bridges, which I've already done a video on, and I'll put that in the description below. If you have any questions about this video, please leave it in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you're new here, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. All right, thanks.